Possession crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. It's over the bar. Oh, holy Moses.
Good morning. Welcome to the RTÉ GAA Podcast. Mikey, Stafford here. Joined, as I was last week, by a motley crew. Rory O'Neill, Ciaran, Whelan and Dessie, Dolan. Are we all well, gentlemen?
Good, Mikey.
Good, not about it, Mikey.
Very good.
So, I went down to Ballina Credit Union. I got me €500. I've hired an agent, and he's getting me on the Sunday game next year. I'm looking at a menswear sponsor. I'm full bore ahead because I'm clearly the football expert on this podcast. Out of the four of us, I said I was going to crow, lads. Four of us, only one man picked Tyrone, and it wasn't even close.
Yeah, spot on, Mikey. Fair play.
Yeah, if I could play the game nearly as well as I could occasionally predict it, I'd be flying. It was a hell of an All Ireland final. Dessie, it went to script, it only went to Tyrone's script. They were phenomenal, and as a very sage football analyst said here last week, being me, they have a very clearly defined game plan, and they know exactly what they are as a team, and that's what they were last Saturday, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was very enjoyable. They don't do sentiment in Tyrone, really. When it came down to being clinical and do what to do well, they did it really well. They did very similar to the Kerry match, and so far as they turned over Mayo quite a bit. I thought Mayo might be a little bit thought they might have a bit of a clearer game plan. They were unlucky, I suppose. Mayo needed everything to go right, and they had goal chances that didn't just fall for them or didn't take the opportunities for them. Conor Loftus didn't have much time to adjust his body. But I just thought the performance as well. I was behind Niall Morgan for a lot of his kickouts in the second half, and gee, spectacular kickouts. So really now, I think I was saying that some of his 45s and that kicking were just a little off, but in the final he gave an exhibition. I thought his kicking was really good, from the frees, but also from really and truly that kick that they got the goal from. The Darren McCurry goal, it was just absolutely phenomenal. I must have travelled 80 metres again, and the ability to do something like that was great. So, and Tyrone, they just have that's the one thing you'd say about new management. Conor Myler and Kieran McGeary this year have been a revelation. Even the likes of Peter Hart, I'm sure you'd agree, Ciaran, that he changed his style of play. He was rather quiet this year, but very effective in the job he was doing. He kind of changed his role. He wasn't masquerading all over the pitch. He had a clearly defined role, which probably suited him a little bit better. So, fair dues to Tyrone and Brian Dooher and Fergal Logan, but they seem to, I think, that they use the league very much as a learning tool, and there's some very good performances and some very bad ones. Obviously, the one in June down in Killarney where they shipped 6 goals was the ideal lesson. Imagine thinking when they were on the bus on the way out out Fitzgerald Park, thinking, it's grand, lads, in a few months we'll win the All-Ireland. It's phenomenal to see the turnaround, but it was good because what happened in that situation is that everybody started looking elsewhere for the All-Ireland champions. They weren't looking to Tyrone, and that's probably a nice way to be.
Yeah. Ciaran, I find there's always a rush after an All-Ireland final to say, could this be the start of a dynasty, etc. Maybe it's the influence of the Dubs and Kilkenny. Once Limerick had won their first, people are asking would they win a second. It was the same with Galway. With Tyrone, I'm not quite hearing that, but I think we are talking perhaps about a more democratic time in football, and perhaps maybe not just in who wins the All-Ireland, but how they go about winning it. Everyone said how the Dubs play is the blueprint, and if you don't play this style of football, you're not going to be at anything. Tyrone didn't play a Dublin style of football. They played very much a Tyrone style of football, which has been kind of finessed a little bit. But it's nice to see that there isn't just one size that fits all, perhaps.
Yeah, and it's a narrative that always gets overplayed when a team wins, or they can win 2 or 3 and stuff like that. I think one of the biggest advantages for Tyrone this year was probably the route that they had, and you reflect back in the year, and Kerry weren't really road tested at all in Munster. Dublin, Leinster was a waste of time. Mayo even cruised through Connacht to a Connacht final, where Tyrone were faced had to face Cavan, had to face Donegal, had to face Monaghan, Kerry, Mayo. So they've done it the hard way. And I think, that stood them big time because they had been through the mill on a few games. They weren't spectacular in 70 minutes of all their games. They went through phases, 15, 20 minutes in some games where they looked, distinctly average in the second half against Monaghan. And even the third quarter last week, they got the goal, but I think Peter Hart's point after 20 minutes of the second half, like there was a period there where you were kind of going, who really wants to take this home, lads? Who really wants to win it? But I think, in fairness to them, they struck a brilliant balance in their game, and they were allowed to do that because they had the game time to do it. They realised defensively, man to man, wasn't their game plan, and they needed to get support back. They needed to get a +1 or a +2. They're excellent at identifying a situation when somebody's in trouble and has lost kind of control of the ball, and they get a second or third man in, or any time a Mayo fella hit his knees, there were all out, 2 or 3 lads were in straight away. They protect that scoring zone very, very well, but they married it, I think, with a good balance to their attacking game. And they were, when the opportunity was there to kick the ball, they kicked it, and they took risks even kicking it. And even their 2 goals, I suppose, the Conor Moyle floater ball, he identified McShane was in there, had a height advantage. He basically stuck one in the air, a great floater pass, and it was difficult for Rushy and Mullen probably to defend against. And he should have came out, took man ball. But that combined with the use of their long kick out, where they take 11, 12 guys out of the equation, it puts them in a brilliant attacking platform. They've been trying that all year. They were trying that against Donegal. It's been part of their plan. As Dessie said, Morgan to me was man of the match, I thought, in my view. I thought he just was brilliant in terms of how he controlled it. He played that extra man at the defence. He came out when they needed it. It kind of stopped Mayo from going for that aggressive kind of press at times because he was the overlap. His kickouts were absolutely top drawer, and then when he got his 45s and his frees, he nailed them as well. And
Whelan, people talk about Mayo like missing 3 or 4 goal chances. One of those was saved by Morgan, and the others, he was a huge influence in that. He's a big man, he fills his goal, and he makes people go for the corner, and they miss when they go for the corner.
Absolutely. So I thought he was excellent. So yeah, they struck a balance to their game plan. And I think they were served greatly by getting 4 or 5 tough games to be, you look at Kerry even, and you look at, okay, what's gone on this week, we might talk about that or whatever, but, Kerry haven't been road tested at all, they haven't had, okay, Dublin in 2019, they were caught in the Munster final last year, and they kind of cruised to a semi-final this year. Like, there's no one has asked any questions of them. They're not hardened battles. They haven't had to dig out a result. They haven't had to show resilience to dig one out of the fire. That being able to recover from 20-25 minutes of poor football, that's the weakness in Kerry at the moment. So I think while at the start of the year we look at the Ulster Championship and we say it's a huge disadvantage because they have a tougher road. Absolutely, they have a tougher road. But the team that comes through it, and gets to Croke Park is generally in a good place, and I think that stood to Tyrone big time.
Yeah. So just as well, Rory, then the special congress on the 22nd of October, the mood music now is that they're not going to do away with the provincial championships, and we're probably going to go back to either the Super 8s format or the pre-Super 8s format. That's nothing confirmed. That just seems to be what the Jungle Drums are saying at the moment. And as a certain wise, sage football pundit, we have a few of them on here, said several months ago, Rory.
Yeah. No, you've already gone down the I told you so route, so I won't jump on that bandwagon as well. But
I'll go on, it's fun.
No, I did. Look, I did mention that I felt that people were getting a bit carried away with the potential for change, and that the change was going to happen, and I wasn't sure. And we'd mentioned that there were 3 options on the table. There was option 1, 2, and the third option was no change, and I still think that that's the most likely outcome. The
GPA have thrown their lot behind the league championship link up, so that one's screwed anyway.
But then what happens to the league? Like the problem with the 2 formats that are as they are being proposed is they're both very flawed in their own rights. And the interesting thing about it is, like, they'll put the first 2 formats to the floor, both of which won't get the 60%, I'd imagine. And then it'll be back to the old format where they'll say, right, will we go to pre-COVID format, which includes the Super 8s? If that gets rejected, then it's the old format that'll be put before the floor, which is one back door, and then the old quarterfinals, except with a Tailteann Cup thrown into the mix. And I was actually looking at the potential draws for next year, and that means Leinster versus Munster, which, all things being equal, let's be perfectly honest, as things stand, that's Dublin versus Kerry. So you could very well end up in a situation where Mayo could end up back in an All-Ireland final in 2022, and I don't think I could cope. I don't know if I could cope with that. I mean, I don't know what I was actually looking there. I mean, they're getting so much stick from different quarters about losing, and I think there's an awful lot of people, I suppose, this stage, they're kind of beyond sympathy, they're beyond, criticism, they're beyond disappointment. I think at this stage it really is an element of despair with them. But at the same time, I was kind of looking, and I mean, I come from a county that has an equally bad record in All-Ireland finals. So I was actually just looking at it very briefly this morning before we came on. 87, 88, 93, 99, 07 and 09 in football. So that's 6. And then in hurling was 92, 03, 06, 13 and 21. So that's 11 All-Ireland finals Cork have lost in the same period, in exactly the same period. The only difference is between Cork and Mayo in that time is Cork
won a few.
Won a few. And I think that's just
a very big difference, Rory.
It is a big difference. I do accept that. And it was just, I suppose, Saturday, a fella said to me before the match, I asked him to call it, and he said, and it's just stuck with me, he said, Tyrone will win. And I said, why? Because they'll find a way to win, and Mayo will find a way to lose. And it's when you kind of boil it down to that, it's just, I mean, I don't, like you mentioned earlier there, Mikey, in relation to Tyrone and the fact, though, that apparently they have all the answers. Like, they only scored 4 points in the second half. They didn't kick one single score from play in the second half. They didn't get their first point in the second half until the 67th minute. 3 minutes to go in normal time before they kicked their first point of the second half from any type of score. And the 4 scores they got were 2 fisted points, a mark a mark from Peter Hart, and a free from Niall Morgan. Like, this wasn't
2 fisted goals.
Yeah, the goals obviously were massive, but Mayo had their goal chances too. I wouldn't necessarily say Tyrone stumbled over the line, because they didn't. It looked like, when you watch the game back, that they were always in control and they were always going to be able to have enough. But Mayo definitely, I think Mayo lost this in a way that'll hurt them. This will scar Mayo football a lot more than the hiding that Cork took in that hurling, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think you're right, Rory. Like, we've sat, I suppose, in the Sunday game many a time over the last 10 years, and the question was asked, can Mayo come back, and can Mayo come back? And fair play to them, they always come back.
They always do, yeah.
And in the build up to the final, even last year's final, I know it was a winter final, but it was very low key, and the sense was it was a free shot for Mayo, and it was under the radar stuff, and they came in, okay, Dublin won by 5 points, but there was a huge amount of euphoria this year, particularly after the Dublin match, and maybe with Dublin Kerry out of the way. There was a sense that their time had come, and it's very, very difficult, I suppose, for players to avoid all that. And we spoke about this team coming in with no baggage. Well, now they have baggage, I suppose. They've just put the baggage on their back going forward. And I think this one, when people say there's very little sympathy for them, this is probably the time they need sympathy, because this one was going to hurt badly. Because it's that type of game where you can't get out of bed for a few days, and when you look back on the video, you will absolutely eat you, because they will look at the chances, they look at the opportunities, the key moments in the game that could have been turning points, the concession of the 2 goals. Now, I said last week, apart from the Dublin match, they've been conceding an average of 2 goals, and that's been a big problem with this Mayo team. And if you're not getting them at the other end, you're in trouble. So I think it's a real step back moment for James Horan to kind of really say, well, where do we go from here? Do we need to look at our game plan? Do we need to look at our structure? Are we defensively solid enough? Are we too attack minding? Do we leave ourselves exposed too much too often at the back? Does he need to find a new forward plan? They lacked any sort of direction up front. To me, looking at them in the first half, their plan was to get the kick out away as quick as possible, move the ball as quick as possible, and get it into the forward line before Tyrone had a chance to reset. But they had no structure in getting it into the forward line. And when they did get, they didn't kick it that much. And when they did go for a short kick pass, they had no second phase runner, they had no support players coming. So I think tactically they were a little bit naive, but I do think this one is I agree with Rory, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt badly. And it's going to be a difficult one to recover from.
Dessie, I suppose Dessie, the one thing that might save them is the fact that it is a very young team, and only a few old stalwarts have tasted defeat more than once before this. Now those guys have had tasted defeat 7 times, or been in 7 finals, and that's going to sting. But the bulk of this team are young, and they haven't quite been bet down by the hammer of history as much.
They'll be back. It's nothing sure. Yeah. They'll be back. And they'll come with their to be honest, coming into the game, just kind of felt maybe it was their time, but Jeannie Mac, you have to wonder now, wouldn't you? Really, I would be concerned. I was very impressed. I said this last week about James Horn and the camp, and Ciaran McDonald's in there. It looks like a great camp to be involved with. He tried 41 players this year. 41 players. I suppose really for me, if you took Lee Keegan out of that side, he was immense. I thought if Mayo won, I would have put him in place for Footballer of the Year. I thought he was immense, but Lee Keegan is not getting any younger, and if you take him out of that side, I do think it'll affect him badly. Aidan O'Shea obviously isn't getting any younger, and obviously he's carrying a lot of baggage now. Kevin McLaughlin is a player that I liked over the years, but again, he's put a lot of mileage. And then Colin Boyle was on the panel and never got a game all year. You see, I suppose what you need, it's critical, is forwards, and you need quality. And while they have all the athletic ability in the world and they have a good squad of players, they are short on a couple of players, I think. The only thing that will have them back is so far as that can Galway get up to a level where they're going to actually fulfill their potential and challenge them. Because I do think really it's between Galway and Mayo now and Connacht for the next few years. I think Roscommon have dipped off a little bit. That's a squad of players that have come through and they've been there 10 years and they've probably gone a bit stale. And it'll be interesting to see how they progress. But Mayo, as night follows day, Mayo will be back at some stage with the belief that they might do it. But I suppose you would have to imagine that the Kerry team going forward, when they get their act together, get a bit of steel into that team somewhere. I don't know where the steel's going to come from, but they need to get something into it. Dublin, while they lost, they're going to be back in the mix again. Like, they're going to be hurting as well. So it'll be very interesting.
I actually think, Dessie, I think in one sense, that defeat that Dublin experienced could be one of the most dangerous things that's happened to the championship for the next couple of years, because I think that could be like that defeat could be very much like the Tygog Murphy last minute goal for Cork against Kerry in Páirc Uí Chaoimh in 1983, and then Kerry went on and won another after winning 4 in a row, went on and won another 3 in a row after that. And I would expect Dublin to be back.
They're very thin on the ground, though, Whelan, aren't they?
Yeah, I'm not. I think certainly Dublin. There's no doubt Dublin will be there or thereabouts, and will compete next year. And listen, they were caught on a bad day and had a very, very bad second half. And I think if Dublin, for me, the key thing is they have to start playing with a little bit more risk and less conservative and back themselves.
There's no question about Dessie walking away, is there, Whelan?
No, I don't think so. No. I don't think so, Mikey. I think it's about regrouping and saying, we do have to. Maybe he might make tweaks to his backroom team, and particularly maybe up front within the forward unit. They lacked that cutting edge. They weren't playing with any sort of risk. Too much conservatism had kicked in. The retaining possession. Teams had kind of sussed them out, beginning to know how to deal with them. So I think he's a fair bit of work to do, and they will be competitive. They could get Mannion back. Brilliant. That would give them a huge impetus. No, I don't think. But Jack McCaffrey, highly unlikely. But the biggest challenge, Rory, for me, long term, looking 3 or 4 years time, is is kind of finding new players and bringing new players into the equation. And that was one thing. Jim Gavin was very good. He found 1 or 2 every year. And
the age profile of Dublin has
Yeah, and Mick Fitz, you've got James McCarthy come to the twilight of their careers.
Johnny
Cooper, Dean Rock,
Stephen Cluxton.
They have a couple more years left. But I think Dublin's challenge is going to be, mixing up their game plan, and they're going to have to find 2 or 3 players. And I think in the league next year, he's going to have to throw guys in there and take risks and try and bet a few new players in and see what he can get out of them and try and transition, I suppose, quickly and find 2 or 3 that he can trust for championship.
Yeah. In fairness to Dessie, he took on a team that had just got stale. Like, if you keep on winning, like, the prize for the Tyrone players last weekend to win in the All-Ireland was absolutely unbelievable, and the motivation to do it. But if you're telling Dublin players that have 5, 6 or 7 All-Ireland medals, come on, lads, we want to go again and all this, like the likes of James McCarthy, like, you just drop back 5 or 10%, and that 5 or 10% brings you back to the pack and the appetite. And like Dessie Farrell comes in and says, lads, I need more from you. And it was just not there this year. It just looked like a tired team.
Yeah.
And then you've Kerry, Mikey, the farce in Kerry, where we can all apply for the job in the next couple of weeks. Do you know what I mean?
It's very odd. It's like they missed a press release before that press release. They do. We were slagging Eamon Fitzmaurice here a couple of weeks, saying how we reckoned he was lined up for the Kerry job about 2 years before he got it, and it's all very neat and tidy and everything is coordinated down there. Well, they've certainly proven me wrong now this time, because this seems like a bit of a shambles, and Jack O'Connor quitting Kildare, which made everybody raise their eyebrows, and now they've gone and told the sitting manager that he can reapply for his job if he wants to. It's it's you must be enjoying it, Rory, looking over the fence.
Well, look, whoever goes in there, they're going to be in a very healthy place. To be honest, I don't think Kerry need a huge amount to fix. No, they need a stopper. They need a stopper at 6. And I thought Jason Foley actually had a brilliant year at fullback, and he's not a natural fullback at all. And I think he solved the big problem for them there. Their biggest issue is a stopper at number 6. Lads running down the middle, which they haven't really had, probably going back to the Mike McCarthy days or Seamus Moynihan. They haven't had that stopper, that grit in the middle of their defence. But if they can coax Peter Crowley, or they'll find someone. Trust me, there'll be no flies on Kerry. They'll be in the All-Ireland semi-final next year, 100%.
It's all very nice and all very open. Like, when you think of that Kerry team that were winning All-Irelands with Tomas, Paul Galvin, like, geez, they drag it down, Thomas Sullivan, like they're very good game management, and they're very good leaders on the pitch. And it looks a team devoid of leaders at the minute. I know you have Clifford and Sean O'Shea, who's just exceptional.
At the other end of the field, you're missing
there's the problems are arriving, but the lads aren't dealing with the problems as it happened on the pitch. And
but I also, Dessie, think though, and this is a problem that pertains to Cork, and I think it's a problem that is applicable to Munster football and football, we'll say, south of the M50 in general. I think a lot of teams down the game has changed a lot. We're still playing a sort of a happy clappy football where we're all, I'll mark you and you mark him, and away we go. Like, the game is so much more different now. And I think by and large, that is thanks to, I would say, Ulster universities and Ulster teams in general. They've forced people to think more about how to set themselves up, how to engage in the tackle, how to get in there with that nearly foul, but just get away with it as well at the same time. Like, they're brilliant at it. It's a fantastic skill that they have. Like,
nice, I think you're playing against them.
No, I know, but
you're right on your edge. You're right.
But I think Munster teams, Cork and Kerry, maybe to a lesser extent, but certainly any teams that are looking to try and get up that level, just don't really understand the terms of engagement that are now being officiated, and how to get in with this, how to engage on that level. And I think that's ultimately where Tyrone's All-Ireland success was built upon.
It leads me on
defence.
Go on, Whelan.
Yeah, I think from a Kerry perspective, I think all the ingredients are there, lads. I think the reason, if it's a job that lots of people would want, because I think there's only tweaks, and they do might have to find that hard edge, but I think that's something that they can certainly work on solve, and a new manager can bring little subtle changes like that to their game plan. Kerry for me are a team that are like the talent there is incredible. So you would imagine, there's plenty.
You're applying for the job, Whelan. You're applying for the job. You'd imagine I'm going to apply.
But you would imagine down there, that's why Jack O'Connor, I'm sure that's why Jack O'Connor sees this as a massive opportunity. He thinks, I'm onto something here if I go back and I do it. Likewise, maybe Eamon Fitz, they could maybe get back into the equation. I'd say they want Donny Buckley maybe to come back down the road from Monaghan as well. So there's probably a lot of noise going on in the background, but it's amazing how the county board didn't at least sit down with Peter Keane and say, right, let's have a review of the 3 years. Where are you at? What are your plans? What are you looking at? Like the process they've gone about is kind of it's disrespectful to him, I think.
But it's a vicious environment, Whelan. I mean,
he deserves a little bit more. I get that. I know it's 3 years and he hasn't won it, but simple basic respect that you go about the process in an appropriate manner. You know what I mean? If they don't want him as manager, at least deal with it in the right way. Put a general advertisement out there, that you can reapply for the job. I don't get that.
Yeah.
I think Jack O'Connor is getting a free ticket here, lads. How did he just walk away from Kildare like that?
Having committed a few weeks earlier.
Like it is right. You've no chance anyway.
And the other aspect there, the one thing, I mean, look, he's an excellent manager. He's actually done a really good job with Kildare, to be fair, right? But the one thing for me is, if Kerry end up having to go for Jack O'Connor Mark III, what does that say? Like,
they don't seem to have a succession plan this time. They really have been caught in the hop to a certain degree. Like there's no obvious candidate screaming out down there.
Yeah, it's true. Having had that kind of have it all tied up so neatly the last few times, they've clearly forgotten what to do when they don't have a candidate ready. Before we finish, I just wanted to. It was in my head anyway, but Niall McCoy wrote a very interesting piece about the 1991 Down All Ireland winners for the RTÉ website, and just about how they broke the dam. They were the first Ulster winners since when was it, 60s, and how they laid the path for those behind them. Obviously 92, 93, 94 with Derry and Donegal and Down again. It's been a while now since you're going back to the start of the last decade for the last Ulster champion, Dessie, and you just wonder, as Whelan kind of detailed at the start there are 4 or 5 teams now in Ulster who probably consider themselves all on a par. Armagh probably should have beaten Monaghan could have beaten Tyrone, Donegal should nearly win Ulster every year if you read the predictions before the tournament starts. If they, whoever comes out of Ulster, and now there's going to be a back door next year, so whoever kind of gets a couple of wins under their belt in Ulster and goes into the qualifier system, like there does seem to be like some powerhouses building up there.
Well, Ulster, as Ciaran pointed out there, how strong the province is. I suppose you look at a team that's exciting me the last little while, but have not really pushed on to the level I thought they would, is Armagh. Certainly with Kieran McGeeney and 3 Ciarans. I don't know if Kieran Donaghy staying on with that job, but in terms of management team, it looks like quite solid. And just Kieran McGeeney himself, I always enjoyed his company. I always thought he was a great person to be involved with. So I'd imagine it's a good setup, very professional. Donegal, look at how much more can they squeeze out Michael Murphy is a concern. Equally, Monaghan and Conor McManus, like they're 2 game changers, to be honest. And they really put the miles on the clock, so it'll be interesting to see where they go. I was actually surprised with Tyrone when I looked at the panel. They're quite young. I have Tiernan McCann at 30 and Matty Donnelly at 30. And I think Niall Morgan is at 30. The rest of them are mid-20s, which just gives you an indication that they will be around for a long time. And I think looking at the performance and the strength and conditioning, some of the players, and they're a team now that have set themselves up really well for the next couple of years. But the only thing was goals saved in the 2 games, like the Kerry got 3 goals and then the 2 goals in the final. They were delivered off-time goals, which is opportunistic, I suppose, to say the least.
Yeah. Whelan, but obviously accepting the obvious talents in Dublin and in Kerry and in Mayo, which is to say we actually have, we're looking forward to a genuine All-Ireland championship next year with all, hopefully, and the Tyrone win, like Down in 91, should give a lot of confidence to those other teams in Ulster who, as I said,
absolutely.
Cigarette paper between them.
Yeah, absolutely. They'll all believe that they're part of the game now, along with Mayo, Galway, Dublin, you know what I mean? Kerry, you know, I wouldn't say Cork have entered that space yet, Rory, but they're a little bit behind. But I think the great thing, Mikey, about next year is, you know, we've had 2 straight knockout championships, you know. We've had very damn squids of provincial football. Like we forget, we had a great end to the championship with 2 semi-finals and a final, but we forget what the first 6-7 weeks were like, you know. Apart from the games in Ulster, it was awful stuff, and there were lopsided games, and it's okay. It's sad to think that that's the direction we're heading back, because I think the provincial system for me is dead on its feet.
Whelan, sorry to cut across you, because I think it's just an important point to make. What you're going to have next year, the hurling round robin is going to be back. So the hurling lads are going to be flaking 7 kinds of lumps out of each other. It's going to be blockbuster match after blockbuster match in all the earlier rounds. It's going to be hurling. It's going to be, you know, Cork versus Limerick versus Waterford, Galway versus Kilkenny, week after week after week, building and building. Meanwhile, in football, you're going to have Kerry versus Clare, probably in the first round, 20-point hiding.
Yeah, and what I was going to say, Rory, obviously, next year we do have the qualifiers, you know. But again, if we'll be realistic with the qualifiers, they only heat up till round 3 or round 4. Now, obviously, the Tailteann Cup is going to have a different dynamic if that goes ahead. So that should, you know, possibly freshen up the quality in the qualifiers and stuff like that. So it is going to open up opportunity for teams to get a bit of a run, and the importance of winning your provincial championship next year, you know, mightn't be, you know, it won't be as important to some kind. Like there was this year, all bets were off. It was one day you're out. You know what I mean? So it changes the dynamic of planning, and particularly up in Ulster, Mikey. You know what I mean? Because we've seen so many times, so often, teams come through the back door into the qualifiers and getting into a quarter final and going down that route. You know what I mean? So there will be a different dynamic to the football championship next year, even though it's disappointing that it appears we haven't made radical changes that will really freshen it up. You know what I mean?
That's sorry, Mikey, just before we go, and that's it. Like it will be a different dynamic, but only a small bit different, really. You know, like you're going to have the Tailteann Cup, where the also ran to get shunted into, and you will have.
That's very appealing there, Rory.
I know, but like it's just. I just got a sense that, look, there was an appetite for change.
Oh, big time.
We're going to get the special Congress.
It's shocking to think they won't change, Rory.
The one thing I would say on it is the GAA in general, right, have been criticised a lot in the past for being slow to change. I'm not so sure I go along with that. They have been radical when they've wanted to be. The Super 8s was very radical. They made some big rule changes, were quite radical. They needed to tailor the whole thing when COVID hit. Like, they can be radical when they want to be, and they can, the pace of change can be quite quick when they really want it to be. I think the biggest problem with the change that is required is, for all its good parts, is the Ulster Championship. I think the other 3 provinces would quite happily renege and release and let their provincial championships go. I think Ulster is the actual stumbling block here, by and large, to effective change.
The concern for me in all of this, Rory, is someone that would be affected by, Division 3, Division 4, up to every 2 now. Like, it's a problem for us is that we can't compete any year. So young lads aren't exactly motivated to get involved with county teams right now. But like, if there's no change this year, when's on the table again? So it's more of the same for a long time.
24, yeah. Though it is planned to come in a lot faster than we think, but like, the problem will be the provincial councils, provincial championships, moving those. Look, we all know the provincial championships. It's very simple. The provincial championships are pre-season competitions. You run the league, and then when you get to your All Ireland championships, it's 16 teams in the senior and 16 teams in the intermediate. It's very, very simple.
The formula works in the hurling. The formula works in the ladies.
It works at club level. It works everywhere. It works everywhere. But it's getting to that stage is the problem.
I think the mindset of county boards has to change. You have to do something for themselves. Like, they'll go up and vote to keep the thing the same. And they're the counties that are being affected.
But sure, what crowds are they getting to a lot of these provincial championship matches anyway? Bar the finals. And I still think you'll probably get big crowds if they're pre-season, under lights, market it differently. I still think there'll be an appetite there for that. But it's when we get there.
I think we'll come back to this around 22nd of October, Independence Day. So maybe we'll all meet up in the same room with no masks to do a podcast, or maybe not. Anyway, we'll leave it at that for this week. Thanks, Dessie, Ciaran, and Rory, and look, we'll catch you all again soon. Thanks very much.
Guys.
Goodbye.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. It's over the bar.